Welcome to the second half of November, and though I'm pretty sure you've been seeing plenty of Christmas advertising for the past few months anyway, I'll now formally accept that 'tis the season for some overwhelming corporatism. And what can be more corporate than one of the most gigantic monopolies in the world? Of course, it's Disney, and surprise, surprise, they're bringing something back again. We've already faced the return of Beauty and the Beast, Jungle Book, Aladdin, Mulan, and a sequel to Frozen, but now Disney has the next best thing by merging these two types of properties together. Sure, maybe one day we will be getting like a Hercules remake and a Little Mermaid remake, and oh, you gotta be kidding me. They're also already lined up for production? Okay. Anyway, with the signs of remakes clearly not stopping, what's the next possible step once everything's already been retold? Well, of course, it's to combine the remake resources and the technology that comes with them with these scrapped together sequels that always comes from anything successful. As yes, Disney's first live action remake sequel is very much in the works and ahead of a couple straight remakes with predictably The Lion King 2 remake. It's the goddamn Disney circle of life. Or I guess maybe the titling would be The Lion King Remake 2? The Lion King 2 insert year here? I'm not really sure how they'd title that. Things are at least a little more open than usual with this project compared to the franchise a couple years ago where we knew exactly what was coming, right down to every single story beat across the entire 118 minutes of runtime. Still, I guess it was to be very expected. We all know the 2019 Lion King remake, it completely shattered all sorts of records, and just looking at it, you could just taste the tears of critics and anyone who's tired of this ready meal of a movie trend. I don't need to be the one to tell you that this is one of the highest grossing films of all time, and certainly the case in the animated category, despite the fact that Disney hates calling this fully CGI'd movie an animated movie. But of course, with its financial successes of making $1.657 billion, it comes with a massive asterisk on the side that opens up an interesting discourse for what's next. Scores on Rotten Tomatoes gives this a 52% from critics and a general 88% from audiences who could enjoy the story and spectacle still, but most agreed that there was a preference to the original classic for its ability to actually emote and explore the expressions of the characters in much more interesting ways. Though the technology brought through with this remake was still very much, admittedly, impressive, which seems to lend to the idea that the film was intriguing and fun, but won't really be looked back on too fondly apart from a technological perspective. With such small changes introduced, the film lacked a secure sense of identity beyond visuals, and that which was changed was often disapproved of by many. Still, there is another one on the way, and though it sounds like just an easy next step to make another $1 billion for Disney, the actual source material for this next installment comes with a handful of roadblocks. There are some real Lion King sequels out there in history. The franchise as a whole has explored through all sorts of prompts, but they don't necessarily allow for that golden formulaic magic that current day Disney might want to invest into with something as gigantually budgeted as this. For a start, these films are direct-to-video films going straight to VHS, which often led to a noticeable decline in production budget as well as sometimes the overall quality of these kind of projects. Still, some of these are pretty adored. The Lion King 2, Simba's Pride, has a kind of Romeo and Juliet spin to the original's over Hamlet tones, and The Lion King 1.5, which apparently in some regions was called The Lion King 3 Hakuna Matata? Huh, I never knew. Followed Timon and Pumbaa just before the events of the first film and showing everything from their perspective. There's also several spin-off TV episodes with Timon and Pumbaa, because I guess at this point Disney realized that they were the most popular characters. Now, how that translates to this new project is really up to speculation, though there are some details that we do already know. Starting off, apparently, the story will further explore the mythology of the characters, including Mufasa's origin story. Moving the story forwards while looking back conjures memories of The Godfather Part 2, set on the African plain with a continuation of the tradition of music that was a key part of the 1994 animated classic, the 2019 film, and the blockbuster Broadway stage transfer. Oof, a lot to read from that, I guess. The Godfather Part 2 certainly wasn't my first pick for a source of influence for a new Lion King movie, but here we are. And what that essentially means is that the structure is said to be a mashup of timelines from both a prequel and a sequel simultaneously. In The Godfather Part 2, the chronology technology follows both father and son as they tackle their hardships decades apart. But the editing matches their two arcs together, and for Lion King, this would seemingly translate to the rise of Mufasa into power, as well as Simba's new hardship as the new king of the Pride Lands. Fair enough, I wouldn't exactly say it's a simple premise, but an interestingly executed one that I could see being genuinely good.
And hey, since you've practically made it halfway at this point, do consider subscribing. Only you can help balance out our skewed unsub ratio count, and you may have noticed that this week has all been Disney. Last time we did Toy Story, now it's Lion King, and that's going to translate over to the stream we're doing today as well. On twitch.tv/DazzReviews, we're doing Disney games. Let's see how well they've polished their productions when it's in an entirely different medium. Maybe it's Toy Story the game, maybe it's Disney Infinity, Epic Mickey. I haven't quite decided yet because this is recorded way in advance, but we'll see what it will be. I'm curious to try something like that, and so we'll do the same as we did before with it being a reverse video game adaptation. So come join us for that. How do you do a costume for the Lion King? I've got a bit of a mane going on with how much hair there is, but like, I don't have anything beigey orange. What colour are lions? I'm too colourblind for this. I'm out of my depth.
Of course, not all too many have such high hopes for what is essentially Dead Horse the film franchise, but having to sever away from the direct frame-to-frame animation and taking on a more original creative approach at least allows for the pressure of following one of the largest films of all time to actually lead into something with some actual care and attention brought into it. This can't just be another copy and paste job, but it does have to reach the similar successes of its previous incarnation. And Disney seems to be putting in some of the motions to actually make that a plausible reality. Jon Favreau's great, and though there's nothing particularly bad about the stuff he's worked on, I mean, sometimes it's pretty iconic, he's not returning in the director's seat this time around. Instead, in a bit of an oddball swing, Barry Jenkins has taken that slot. Now, this guy ain't your classic Disney super production director. He's an Oscar winner, sure, he's good at what he does, but his previous big pieces, Moonlight and If Beale Street Could Talk, are deeply character-driven pieces that aren't the big commercial money bait that we would expect from something like this, implying that the team are genuinely trying to make a damn fine original story for this massive follow-up. Sure, plenty of people would probably prefer Barry to stick with the more humble art pieces he's made in the past, but I don't think any one of us would reject this Disney paycheck, and hey, it could lead to something genuinely fantastic from a critical and a technological perspective. There's no chance that Disney is unaware of the divide their film has created, so making efforts to fill that gap for one of their biggest successes only makes logical sense. Plus, there is always that line of reasoning that now we've seen a remake Lion King, we get the gist, we understand the technology, and it doesn't wow us anymore, and they need to try and pull us back to wow us again. Now, when talking about this project, Jenkins has gone on to say that helping his sisters raise two boys during the 90s meant he grew up with these characters. Having the opportunity to work with Disney on expanding this magnificent tale of friendship, love, and legacy, while furthering his work chronicling the lives and souls of folk people within the African diaspora is a dream come true. Never heard diaspora before. Still, from him it sounds like he's still got the character study aspect in mind, focusing on the lives and souls of the African people. Though there's still all sorts of questions unanswered. The 2019 remake copied over songs from the original and added one more from Beyonce, but what's the sequel gonna do? There's still a decent handful of songs from the Lion King story to be told from both the direct-to-video sequels as well as the Broadway show. Things like He Lives in You has that wonderful tone of how Mufasa lives on inside Simba and everybody else and is always by his side in some capacity that would especially go well with a story comparing the two. As well as Not One of Us being a particular fan favorite to the people who've heard it, or at least around me they are, telling the tale of an exiled Kuvo, though for the longest time without context I thought this was like Scar's origin story or something. And I mean, if there was to be some story bending to sing that song, I could totally see a Scar origin story explored in this exact same way in the Mufasa timeline. It's an interesting debate as Disney clearly knows what they're doing when they're put to the task of original songwriting, so we'll just have to see how off the unimpaired path they choose to go. We do know that this movie will be a continuation of the studio's 2019 photorealistic remake and not the 1994 cartoon, but that doesn't necessarily mean that some strings can't be pulled in their favor. Though from an actual visual standpoint, we will probably still have to handle the lack of expression elements of their designs. As much as a blending of the two styles is probably the concept that would be the best well received, but well. Beyond that though, most things are pretty much the same. Though the cast isn't quite confirmed yet since this was only even announced back in September, it's expected that the same cast will probably be making a reappearance. Similarly, Jeff Nathanson, the guy who wrote the screenplay for the remake, is said to be returning to write this sequel prequel. Though considering he's been in charge of the changes that were made in the remake, maybe that's less enticing to hear. The film will of course still be photorealistic, not that anyone really questioned that, and since it's still fairly early days, though I guess not as early as this Hercules and Little Mermaid project apparently are, no confirmed release date has yet been fully established, and especially with this year, it might be a while for some news. Or not, I have no idea when it comes to Disney. The phase of Disney remakes is still going strong, but if you were tired before, you better get used to it, as this is Disney's next step into selling integrity for those sweet, sweet profits. It starts with Lion King 2, the Mamma Mia edition, and will continue on, because apparently there's a whole Aladdin remake sequel also in the works over there, and a Jungle Book 2! Oh, man, art is dead. We're just gonna keep rehashing the same plots over and over again, aren't we? And on that positive note, my name's been Daz, you didn't really care, and I'll see you in a bit.
Thank you for making it all the way to the end of this video, and I gotta say, the more I researched, the more my heart just sank. How they're making an actual Aladdin sequel, and then they are making Little Mermaid and Hercules, and they're making a second Jungle Book. At least the Jungle Book one wasn't so Disney-fied, I think. I haven't actually seen it. Maybe I should do a thing on it, but even... My god, Disney does not stop, do they? It's to the point where I guess they've just bought every other production property to make their own original things and count it as theirs, and then they just crap out the same stuff again and again and again and again. Oh, I am so pessimistically tired of it. Oh my god. And yet, because I'm a reviewer, I'm probably gonna pay for it, and then I'm part of the cycle. Whoa. Sorry for the pessimism, but I mean, you did click on a Disney video, you know. Yeah. It's turned more into a Disney video. Whatever.